Chapter 51. In fact, from the beginning, Noah was very hesitant about whether he should learn magic from Kildas. Noah was not very clear about the power of the superior level destruction spell, Crush. However, from the fact that Kildas, who was definitely a 10 saint, was unable to fully control Crush and repeatedly broke things, causing Magnolia to have to modify because of it, one could roughly see the power of Crush. As for Noah, he was born with a powerful magic that others could not match. Once he learned magic, his strength would increase by leaps and bounds. With such a foundation and learning a superior level destruction spell like Crush, it was easy to imagine how strong Noah's final strength would be. However, this was where the problem lay. Even Kildas was unable to properly control Crush. Once Noah learned Crush, what kind of consequences would it cause? Originally, Noah's magic was abnormally powerful. Even in the past, due to his magic going berserk, it would cause no small amount of disasters. Now, if this magic was used to use the superior level destruction spell, Crush, if he was not careful and was unable to control it like Kildas, then the disaster it would cause would definitely not be comparable to Kildas' level of disaster. Noah was finally able to completely control his magic with great difficulty. However, after learning magic, there was still the possibility of it causing a disaster. How could Noah not hesitate? After all, Noah originally worked hard to train his magic controls so that he would not cause trouble for the people around him after learning magic. If learning Crush would still cause the same consequences, then it would be putting the cart before the horse. Not to mention, after a sorcerer learned magic, their magic power would also increase as they became more familiar with the magic. If Noah really did not want to cause trouble for the people around him, then he would still have to work hard in the future. This was a long way to go. Thus, when he decided to learn Crush from Kildas, Noah also took a long time to make up his mind. Thinking of this, Noah took a deep breath and nodded heavily. Although I have not told grandfather, I think grandfather should not oppose me. Oh? Kildas asked with great interest. Why? Because I've already made up my mind. Noah raised his head and said. Once I start learning Crush, I won't return to fairy tale, as long as I don't control it well. Whoa. The surrounding people were all shocked. Noah, big brother Noah. Mira, Lisanna, Elusha, and the others immediately panicked. However, Noah was still staring at Kildas. The look in his eyes seemed to tell Kildas how determined he was to make this decision. Kildas rubbed his head. This is going to be troublesome. When Kildas looked very distressed, an aged voice drifted into their ears from outside the crowd. Kildas. The crowd gradually opened up a path, and Makarov walked in from the outside, appearing in the eyes of everyone present. President. The surrounding people immediately called out. Grandpa. Naz and Gray hurriedly said to Makarov. You came at the right time. Quickly persuade Noah. Grandpa. Noah looked at Makarov, who was slowly walking towards him, and remained silent. President. Kildas glanced at Makarov and shrugged his shoulders. You came at the right time. I don't know what to do. Kildas. Makarov grinned. Just agree to Noah's request. President. Mira, Lisanna, and the others all called out. Makarov immediately raised his hand and suppressed the voices of the surrounding people. He walked in front of Noah and fixed his eyes on him as he said. Have you really made up your mind? Yes. Noah, who had hesitated for an entire day before making up his mind, nodded without hesitation. I've already made up my mind. Then it's fine. Makarov did not hesitate and turned his gaze to Kildas. Kildas, is there anything that's inconvenient for you? I don't mind. Kildas spread his hands like a hoodlum. Although the crushed spell is very precious because it is a super high-level destruction spell, it is also very difficult to learn and control. Usually, People who seek stability will not choose this spell. Now that there is someone who wants to learn it, I will not hide this spell. After that, Kildas changed the topic again. However, I don't have the patience to stay in one place for so long, and I don't have that much time to teach others either. So, let me go back and write down crush so that Noah can learn it himself. That works too. Noah nodded and agreed with a smile on his face. Thank you, Kildas. Well, take it as a reward for forcing me to retreat, and an apology for almost hurting you when I accidentally got serious. Kildas turned around and waved at Noah. Then I'll go back first. The spell book should be ready by today. You can come to my place tomorrow to get it. With that, Kildas walked out of the crowd and headed back to his house. Just like that, a storm that was neither too big nor too small was settled. Noah, have you really made up your mind? As soon as he returned to Fairy Tale, Gray couldn't wait to ask the question. You won't return to Fairy Tale before you learn how to control magic. Are you serious? That's a super powerful spell that even Kildas can't control. Lysana's voice carried a hint of grievance. If Big Brother Noah can't learn it, then you won't come back, right? The crush spell is indeed very powerful, but didn't you say that the more powerful the spell, the better? Even Mira couldn't help but feel a little anxious. There are so many spells in the library, I don't believe that you can't find what you want. How about you think about it a little more? Alusha seemed to have an opposing opinion. I think that everyone has a point. You should think about it a little more. Naz, Kana, and Elfman all nodded, showing that they agreed with everyone's opinion. His gaze swept across the faces of his friends in front of him one by one, and Noah sighed. I say, can't you have a little more confidence in me? What Kildas can't do you think that I can't do it? I said that I won't return to Fairy Tale, but I won't go anywhere. Without giving anyone a chance to explain, Noah directly explained. I just want to find a place nearby where there is no one to stay and concentrate on practicing magic. Even if I don't return to the guild, I won't go anywhere. Nearby? Lysana quickly asked. Is it the riverbank? No, I plan to go to the mountains nearby. Noah smiled. After all, what I want to learn is the most outstanding spell in the field of destruction, crush. If I'm not careful and destroy that place, then it'll be troublesome. I don't want to personally bury the place where I've been staying for almost 2 years. Everyone suddenly looked at each other. Have a little more confidence in me. Noah ended the conversation with this sentence. I'll definitely come back. Seeing that Noah wasn't going to change his mind, everyone had nothing to say and could only helplessly nod. The next day. At the foot of a medium-sized mountain near Magnolia, Noah appeared, carrying a cloth bag with a knight's sword. Looking up, Noah looked at the medium-sized mountain in front of him and raised his hand. Looking closely, in Noah's hand, there was a pile of paper full of words lying on top of it. Noah slightly raised the corner of his mouth and walked towards the mountain in front of him. Chapter 52. Magnolia, Fairy Tale. Pushing open the doors of the guild, Mira, Elfman, and Lisa walked in and greeted their companions in the guild. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. The elders of the guild also greeted him casually. Following which, they continued to chat and joke around. It's a little late today. Alyssa, who was sitting at a wooden table and eating a strawberry cake, said in boredom. Usually, you guys would be here by now. It's all because of Elfman. Mira glared at Elfman with a dissatisfied expression. If Elfman hadn't spilled our breakfast, we would have been here long ago. Ugh. Elfman lowered his head. Undoubtedly, he was so big, but he acted as if he was bullied. I just wanted to eat my breakfast quickly. Luckily, it's just breakfast. It'll be fine after a simple meal. Lysana tilted her head and smiled cutely. But if big sis Mira didn't see that there wasn't much time left and decided to cook, I would have been even later. Mira can cook. Alusha seemed to be shocked and stood up in surprise. Mira can cook. Are you trying to pick a fight? You stubborn woman. Mira laughed sinisterly. I couldn't find a chance to teach you a lesson. Today, I'll beat you to the ground. I'm the one who made you cry. Alusha glared back. I've tolerated you for a long time. Today, I'll teach you a lesson. After saying that, the two of them immediately stood up aggressively. They even bumped their heads together, causing Lisanna to sigh and complain. What do you mean you couldn't find a chance and tolerated me for a long time? Don't you guys fight every day? Are they fighting every day? Kana rubbed her forehead and looked into the distance. It's the same over there. As soon as Kana finished her words, a series of crackling sounds could be heard. You stepped on me. Hang your eyes. You're blocking my way. Lower your eyes. Naz's and Gray's heads collided fiercely as they glared at each other. They looked like they were about to fight at any time. It was simply a replica of Mira and Alusha. Hey, can't you guys grow up a little? Kana said in a bad mood. If you quarrel and bicker every day, people will think that you have not grown up. It's time for you to be more mature, like Noah. Halfway through her sentence, Kana's voice gradually became softer. When she mentioned the last name, her voice directly disappeared. Noah, Naz and Gray, who originally looked like they could fight at any time, had their expressions sunk at the same time. They didn't say anything. The sinister atmosphere around Mira and Alusha also disappeared. They both snorted and turned their heads away, not saying a word. Big brother Noah. Lisanna's expression was a little depressed as she forced a smile. I almost forgot that big brother Noah isn't in the guild. I was just thinking if I should go and wake him up. No one answered. Everyone was silent, causing the surrounding atmosphere to become more or less heavy. That guy, Mira bit her lips and said in a slightly resentful tone. He decided that kind of thing on his own. He didn't even think about how the people on our side would feel. Well, big sister Mira, don't blame big brother Noah. Lisanna collected her emotions and hugged Myra's arm. After all, big brother Noah is only nearby. We can go and see him at any time. That's what he said. Alusha asked. Do any of you know where Noah went to train? Yesterday, he said he was going to a nearby mountain. Gray said in a casual tone as he casually took off his clothes. But he didn't say which mountain it was. Doesn't that mean we can't find him? Mira frowned and looked in the direction of the bar. Guild Master, do you know where Noah is? Who knows? Makarov, who was drinking at the bar, was the least concerned about it. He said weakly. Anyway, he'll be back when it's time. Until then, let's take our time. Before Makarov could finish his sentence, something happened that ruthlessly interrupted him. Boom! An earth-shattering sound suddenly reverberated throughout the sky of Magnolia, turning into an echo that reverberated throughout the fairy tale guild. Ah! Many girls in the guild screamed, and the others all cried out in alarm. What's wrong? Mira, Lisanna, and Alusha all stood up abruptly. What's going on? This mana. Makarov, who was sitting leisurely at the bar, also stood up. His lazy expression instantly turned serious as he ran out. Seeing Makarov run out, Mira and the others looked at each other and ran out as well. Huff. 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 Almost everyone in Fairy Tale ran out of the guild and followed behind Makarov. They ran along the street in a certain direction. After passing through 2 streets and many tall buildings, Makarov led the members of Fairy Tale out of Magnolia. After an unknown amount of time, the scene in front of them gradually widened, and the number of buildings in the surroundings decreased. The members of Fairy Tale also arrived at the wilderness and continued to run forward. Undoubtedly, Makarov, who had been running at the front, was already old, but his face was not red nor was he out of breath. When he saw a figure appear in front of him, he was startled and stopped. Kildas. Oh. Kildas turned around and saw that Makarov had brought the entire fairy tale over. His eyes widened in shock. Why are you all here? How could we not come with such a big commotion? Mira replied bluntly. By the way, what's going on? What's going on? Kildas let out a rare sigh and let them go. Why don't you see for yourself? As Kildas moved aside, the members of Fairy Tale subconsciously gathered their gazes in front of them. Pa, the sound of something falling to the ground could be heard. However, no one cared about what it was that had fallen to the ground. Everyone present, including Makarov, was stunned on the spot. Their faces were full of shock. This was because in front of them, there was a pile of rubble. Of course, if it was just a pile of rubble, they would not be in such a state. The problem was that if everyone remembered correctly, the location of the pile of rubble should have been a mountain. But now, the mountain was gone. No. It should not be said that the mountain was gone. It should be said that the mountain was broken. That pile of rubble was the original mountain. What? What's going on? Lisanna asked in a daze. Where's the mountain? No one answered Lisanna's question. Obviously, no one was able to recover from their shock. Cough, cough, cough. At this moment, a light cough could be heard. At the top of the pile of rubble, a hand came out and pushed away all the rubble. Then, a head popped out and coughed non-stop. Damn it. It's hard to control. Seeing the person coming out from the top of the pile of rubble, everyone was stunned. Noah. Ah. Noah looked at the dumbfounded crowd and his expression became awkward. I didn't do it on purpose. For a moment, no one could speak. Chapter 53. While the number of mountains around Magnolia couldn't be considered many, they definitely weren't few either. If they were connected into a mountain range, they would be able to encircle Magnolia 20 to 30 times. However, even so, the sudden disappearance of a mountain still attracted the attention of many townsfolk. That was why Villa Magnolia was even noisier than usual these past 2 days. Almost everywhere, one could hear people talking about the disappearance of a mountain. They were so excited about it that it was reduced to idle chatter after meals. While everyone in Magnolia was talking about this matter, the culprit behind it all appeared in the wilderness not far from Magnolia. Noah stood in the open field with his eyes closed, motionless, like a statue, fixed in place. Not far away, Mira and Lisanna, who had been here for quite some time, were quietly watching this scene. Ever since he turned the nearby mountain into a pile of rubble 2 days ago, Noah no longer dared to find a random mountain to stay in. Instead, he found a place where no one would come under normal circumstances and built a simple stone house to stay in. Noah knew that he was born with a physique that was different from ordinary people. Not only was his body immune to all negative powers and side effects, but he was also able to absorb powers that didn't belong to him but entered his body. He was also able to recover his mana on his own. He also possessed mana that others couldn't match in extraordinary senses. Other things aside, just his extraordinary mana meant that once Noah learned magic, his strength would definitely increase by leaps and bounds. Furthermore, the magic that Noah had chosen to use was the superior level destruction magic, Crush. Using such a powerful magic to cast, Crush, the power of a Crush was absolutely astonishing. Undoubtedly, Noah knew that he had miscalculated. In the end, Noah still underestimated himself. He really didn't think that he would be able to turn an entire mountain into rubble after learning Crush for less than a day. If he had known that this would happen, Noah definitely wouldn't have chosen to stay in a mountain. Instead, he would have found a deserted place to stay. Of course, even if this was the case, Noah's path to learning magic could not be said to be peaceful. If someone happened to pass by here, they would definitely be shocked. Because in this extremely vast and uninhabited wilderness, on the ground, there were many deep pits of various sizes. The large ones were at least 200 to 300 meters in diameter, while the small ones were at least 40 to 50 meters in diameter. It was as if they were directly hit by a continuous stream of meteorites. It was extremely shocking. These deep craters were the result of Noah's practice of crush over the past 2 days, or when he was unable to control crush. It was also because of these craters that Mira and Lisanna, who understood that Noah, who had learned crush, would not be able to hide from them, were able to easily find him. Looking at Noah standing there motionless, Lisanna was a little confused. What is Big Brother Noah doing? This. Mira pondered for a moment before replying. If I'm not wrong, that guy should be familiarizing himself with the sensation of crush, right? The sensation of crush? Lisanna was even more confused, her face full of confusion. When people clench their fists and exert strength, isn't it very easy to feel that their clenched fists are filled with strength? Mira explained. It's the same for magic. If magic is compared to strength, when a sorcerer uses magic, they will definitely be able to feel their magic converging in some way. Noah is now familiarizing himself with the sensation of activating magic. What's the point of doing this? Lisanna blinked. Isn't it fine as long as he can use magic? Why does he have to familiarize himself with the sensation of activating magic? Of course, other people wouldn't do this for nothing, but Noah does, Mira said gloatingly. I think he must want to familiarize himself with the sensation of activating magic. That way, even if he can't control it, he can react in time and make a response. Just like before, if Noah had run out of the mountain in time when he lost control of his magic, the mountain wouldn't have disappeared. Well, but this is also good for him. Mira crossed her arms in front of her chest. As long as he can familiarize himself with the sensation of activating magic and grasp that moment, it will be helpful to his cultivation of controlling magic. Is that so? Lisanna muttered, her voice full of hesitation. I originally wanted to see Big Brother Noah, but now he's working hard on his cultivation. What should I do? What do you mean, what should we do? Can't we just go directly? Mira didn't have as many concerns as Lisanna and walked directly in the direction of Noah. Wait, big sister Mira. Really? Lisanna hurriedly followed. In front of her, Noah closed his eyes and stood quietly. Within Noah's body, magic flowed methodically under Noah's control and slowly grew stronger. Feeling the magic power in his body, Noah nodded inwardly. Recalling how to use crush, he immediately wanted to use it. At this moment, the sound of Mira and Lisanna's footsteps entered Noah's ears. He was about to cast a spell when he heard them. It was also at this moment that the magic in Noah's body began to flow faster. In a short moment, it was like a wild horse that had broken free of its reins and flowed according to the method of activating the magic that Noah was about to use. Not good. Noah was alarmed. This was the precursor to the activation of crush. Sensing this, Noah hurriedly turned his head and shouted at Mira and Lisanna. Don't come over. Mira and Lisanna both froze at the same time and reflexively stopped in their tracks. At the same time, a dazzling light burst out from Noah's body and expanded in all directions like a shockwave. Seeing the shockwave of light rush towards them, Mira and Lisanna turned pale with fright. In their hurry, they only had time to raise their hands to block in front of their eyes before their slender bodies were swallowed up by the dazzling light. Boom! A huge sound suddenly rang out. That was the sound of the ground being covered by the light from Noah's body turning into a pile of rubble that was neither too big nor too small, creating a deep crater. After a while, the light dissipated. Standing in the crater, Noah's heartbeat suddenly sped up. Could it be that Mira and Lisanna had been, what's going on? That gave me a fright. Fortunately, the nightmare that he had imagined did not come. Mira and Lisanna were still standing in the same place. Although there was shock on their faces, they were not injured, nor were they missing an arm or a leg. Mira. Lisanna. Only then did Noah put down the huge rock in his heart. But when he thought of the worst-case scenario, his face immediately tensed up. However, before Noah could reprimand the two of them, something unexpected happened. Rip! With a tearing sound, pieces of cloth of different colors flew off from Mira and Lisanna's bodies. Those were Mira and Lisanna's clothes. In the next moment, two equally tender, fair, and charming bodies were exposed to the sunlight without any obstruction. They were also exposed to Noah's eyes, becoming a beautiful scene that Noah would never forget for the rest of his life. Looking at the two charming and tender bodies in front of him, Noah's eyes widened, and his mouth slowly opened wide. Mira and Lisanna felt a chill run down their spines. They lowered their heads and looked at their own bodies. When that familiar fair and delicate figure entered their field of vision, the two girls' minds went blank and their faces flushed red in a second. Ah! A few seconds later, two screams resounded above the crater-filled field for a long time. Chapter 54. Ha! Bang! A ferocious roar and a muffled sound that was loud enough to turn into an echo reverberated in the wilderness that was filled with craters. At the same time, in one of the craters of different sizes, a burst of thick smoke and dust filled the air like an explosion. A figure flew out of the thick smoke and dust. After flying for more than 10 meters, he stopped and stood firmly on the ground, but his figure was in a rather sorry state. It was only natural that he looked wretched. If one had to describe his current situation, it would be that he was being hunted down. Moreover, it was the kind that couldn't fight back. Under such circumstances, the one who attacked him was an opponent whose strength was far inferior to his. How could Noah not be in a difficult situation? When the smoke and dust dispersed, the scene in the crater was exposed to the air. There, Mira had one hand in front of her chest, blocking a part of her fair and tender body, but it was only able to block her chest. Her other hand had completely transformed into a malevolent demonic arm, surging with a dark aura, showing Mira's angry and bashful expression. Behind her, Lisanna was squatting on the ground. Her body was curled up into a ball, completely protecting her tender body. There were tears at the corners of her eyes, as if she had been bullied. Noah felt a sense of guilt rise in his heart. Seeing that Mira was about to charge over again, Noah hurriedly shouted, "Wait! Wait! What? What are you doing? Are you trying to kill me? So, do you want to leave behind your last words?" Mira's cheeks maintained a bright red state. Her eyes were also a little moist, but she forced herself to put on a fierce expression. In the end, it made Mira appear as though she had been wronged, causing Noah's heart to involuntarily tremble. His gaze involuntarily once again drifted to Mira's delicate body that was tinged with red. "You're still looking." Mira's hands tightened in front of her chest. Her expression was one of extreme shame and anger. "Do you really want to die?" I didn't mean that." Noah hurriedly turned his head away. Just as he was about to say something, he heard Mira say this. "I only have one question for you." Mira bit her lips and her voice began to soften. You saw it, right?" Noah's body immediately stiffened. He couldn't help but recall the beautiful scene he had just seen. From a certain perspective, it was absolutely unforgettable. Fair skin. Slender waist. Beautiful curves. Tender body. And the large breasts that had just begun to develop and the heart-trembling little red. Noah, who had never had such an experience before, blushed as expected. His eyes were filled with turbulent emotions, causing tears to well up in Myra's eyes. You really did see it all. No. Wait. Noah could only be at a loss. His mind was in a mess as he tried to defend himself, but in fact, it was just nonsense. In the end, it's not my fault. You were the ones who approached it without permission. I don't want to see that kind of thing. You don't want to see something like that. Myra's face, which was still filled with shyness a second ago, immediately darkened. The shyness in her heart had all turned into anger. Since that's the case, then go to hell. Wait. Looking at the scene of Myra raising her hand that had turned into a demonic arm and rushing towards him, Noah could only dodge in a panic. However, in a situation where he was in the wrong and couldn't fight back, and Noah and Myra's strength were similar, Noah was undoubtedly at an absolute disadvantage. He could only be described as pathetic when he tried to dodge. Fortunately, Myra's seemingly violent attacks didn't seem to carry much killing intent. She was just waving her hands randomly. Although she forced Noah into a sorry state, it didn't pose much of a threat. However, for Noah, the process was rather torturous. It wasn't that Noah was afraid of being attacked by Myra. It was just that Myra was completely naked, and even the slightest movement would reveal a lot of her fair skin. Not to mention, Myra was only using one hand to block in front of Noah. Her actions were frantic as she chased after Noah. Basically, she was continuously taking advantage of him. In other words, Noah could be said to be in pain and pleasure at the same time. On the other hand, Lisanna, who had been crouching on the ground, was the first to notice this. She hurriedly shouted at Myra. Sister Myra. Your body. Myra, who was about to give Noah a head-on attack, finally realized that she was in trouble. She hurriedly retracted her hand and covered her upper body and lower body. Noah. I hate you. Hearing that, Noah could only turn his head away and try his best not to look at Myra and Lisanna. His face was full of distress. I really didn't do it on purpose. After the commotion, Myra picked up her and Lisanna's clothes that had been reduced to shreds. Using some unknown method, she wove a large number of shreds into something that resembled a swimsuit and put it on with Lisanna. At this moment, Strauss's white-haired sisters were staring at Noah with gazes that seemed to be able to pierce through people. One had a ferocious expression, while the other had puffed up her cheeks and looked aggrieved. This made Noah, who was standing in front of Myra and Lisanna, feel as if he was sitting on pins and needles. To be honest, ever since he lost control of his emotions due to his mana, Noah had become very good at controlling his emotions. However, even with that being the case, Noah was still helpless in the face of such a situation. After all, this was the first time Noah had encountered something like this. Therefore, this was also the first time Noah had put himself in such a difficult position. Brother Noah. Lisanna said sternly after a while. Is there anything else you want to explain? I only want to say that everything was an accident. Noah concluded with a single sentence, trying his best to explain himself. But I really did see it. If you want to blame me, I have nothing to say. Wah. What did you really see? Don't you know how to cover it up? Myra felt embarrassed and grimaced. In any case, if you dare tell a fourth person about what happened today, Noah, you know the consequences. As she spoke, Myra ticked her fingers. This action didn't make Noah feel threatened in the slightest, but he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He could only raise his hands in surrender. All right, don't worry. I'll quickly forget about what happened today. Forget. What surprised Noah was that not only did Myra and Lisanna's expressions not ease up, they even seemed a little angry. This made Noah feel a little uneasy. Wah. What? Did I say something wrong? Brother Noah. Lisanna said in a reproachful manner. Forget about what happened because of an accident. That's an irresponsible way of saying it. You're exaggerating, right? Noah laughed awkwardly. Humph. Mira snorted coldly and turned her head away. She looked even angrier than when Noah had seen her naked body. This made Noah feel very conflicted. Can't I forget? Girls are really hard to please. Lisanna took advantage of this time to sneak to Noah's side and whisper something that almost made Noah fall over. If that's the case, brother Noah, you'll have to make me your bride in the future. Bride? Noah raised his voice to the point where it could be heard as an echo. New bride. When Mira heard Noah call her that, she was stunned for a moment before her entire face turned fiery red. She stuttered. Wah. What bride? You just want to see my naked body and you want me to be your bride? You. Don't be too naive. I won't be fooled. Looking at Myra's stuttering and flustered appearance, Noah could only smile bitterly. Lisanna, on the other hand, laughed mischievously and continued to whisper in Noah's ear. You can't forget what I said, brother. Noah. Brother. This sentence made the bitter smile on Noah's face become even more pronounced. Chapter 55. Like the surface of the moon, Noah quietly stood in the wilderness with his eyes closed. Like a stone statue, he did not move. Whing. At a certain moment, Noah's body suddenly trembled. Traces of magic rose from every part of his body like leaking air, turning into a stream of air that gradually grew stronger. A trace of redness appeared on Noah's face. His body also tensed up. Both his fists were tightly clenched, as if he was enduring something. Even though his body was constantly trembling, he did not open his eyes and endured. Until 10 minutes later, the magic leaking from Noah's body had completely turned into a turbulent flow, wrapping around Noah's body, causing the air around Noah to tremble. Just like that, after another 10 minutes, Noah finally couldn't control the mana that was surging in his body, causing it to expand out of his body like a storm. Dong! Amidst a loud sound, the violent impact blew out in all directions with Noah as the center. It swept through the surrounding wisps of air and every inch of the land. Pang! With Noah as the center, the ground within 100 meters of him collapsed without warning, as if it had suddenly been completely cut open, turning into pieces of gravel. Some flew into the sky, some fell to the ground, stirring up countless clouds of dust that spread in all directions. This scene lasted for a long time. Sigh. After everything calmed down, Noah opened his eyes, looked at the newly formed large holes around him and sighed. When will I be able to completely control the superior grade destruction magic, Crush? The negativity only lasted for a while. After a while, Noah pulled himself together. Even Gildas was not able to completely control it. How can it be that easy for me to control it in just 5 days? Not to mention, I have only just learned how to use Crush. I still need to continuously practice, cultivate, and strengthen myself. Learning how to use magic did not mean that one had succeeded. Being able to use a magic shooter's magic was one thing, but in the days to come, one still needed to constantly practice. After all, magic that had just been learned was undoubtedly the weakest. Only by continuously strengthening one's magic and being proficient in using one's magic could one make magic more powerful. Take Gildas for example. When he first learned Crush, he certainly could not be like Noah, who could crush a mountain when he lost control. At the very beginning, being able to crush rocks was already a very good result. Noah was the same. Now, Noah had only just learned how to use Crush. Although the power of Crush was so strong because of his powerful magic, it was still just the beginning. Needless to say, the superior grade destruction spell, Shatter, could not only shatter rocks and the like. When trained to the highest level, even magic spells could be shattered, and even human bodies could be directly shattered, burying the opponent in an instant. This was the terrifying aspect of the superior grade destruction magic, Crush. Noah was now only relying on his powerful magic to use Crush. It could destroy the ground, mountains, buildings, and so on, but if he wanted to reach the realm of being able to crush magic and even a person in an instant, it was still too early. However, if I can't even control it to this extent, when I practice Crush, won't it be even more difficult to control it? Noah closed his eyes again. I have to perfect control of this stage of a Crush as soon as possible. Most importantly, Noah did not want to use his Crush on something like tearing up clothes. Thanks to the incident of him tearing up Myra's and Lasana's clothes 3 days ago, now, even if Mira and Lisanna came to see him, they would not come within 5 meters of him. Moreover, once there was any sign of trouble, they would immediately run away, which was quite a blow to Noah. He was not a gentleman. Could it be that he would take the initiative to tear up their clothes? Thinking of this, Noah once again made up his mind. I have to perfect control of this stage of a Crush as soon as possible. However, just as he finished speaking, not far away, a wave of chaotic shouts rang out. Noah! Noah opened his eyes, turned his head, and looked in the direction of the sound. He saw Mira, Lisanna, Alusha, Naz, Gray and the rest running in his direction. Even Karna and Elfman came, their faces filled with shock, which made Noah curious. What was going on? The madly running companions originally wanted to gather around Noah, but Mira and Lisanna stopped precisely when they were 5 meters away from Noah, and hurriedly stopped everyone. Wait! Don't go near Noah. Ha! The group of companions all stopped in their tracks, looking at Mira and Lisanna with puzzled expressions. It's too dangerous. Mira said directly, and shot a disdainful glance at Noah. This person hasn't completely learned how to control Crush, it's too dangerous to go near him. The group of companions suddenly understood. Of course, they only thought that Mira was only referring to the danger that Noah's Crush would put them in, but they did not know that the danger Mira was referring to was not them, but the clothes on their bodies. Obviously, Mira had completely treated Noah's Crush as a magic used to tear up clothes. Regarding this, Noah did not have any room to explain, and could only ask the group with a puzzled mood. What are you all in such a hurry for? Right. Right. Gray remembered the reason for his visit. Listen to me, Noah, something big has happened. Right. Naz and Elfman both jumped up and down, looking especially agitated. Laxes. Hearing this somewhat unexpected name, Noah frowned, and turned his gaze towards Alusha's direction. Actually, 5 days ago, after you came out to train, the guild leader announced something in the guild. Alusha tacitly understood the doubts in Noah's heart, and nodded her head to answer. Just 5 days ago, the guild leader announced the start of this year's S-Rank Magic Shooter Advancement Test. S-Rank Magic Shooter Advancement Test. Noah stared blankly there. S-Rank Magic Shooter Advancement Test. Just like the literal meaning of the name. It was a test that was held internally by the guild, and only targeted at the members of the guild. Moreover, only magic shooters approved by the guild leader had the qualifications to participate. If one passed the S-Rank Magic Shooter Advancement Test, then the magic shooter would be promoted to an S-Rank Magic Shooter, and would have the qualifications to accept the extremely difficult missions on the 2nd floor of the Fairy Tale Guild. Noah really did not expect that on the day he left the guild, the Fairy Tale would hold an S-Rank Magic Shooter Advancement Test. It was really too coincidental. At this time, Noah suddenly remembered. Just now, Naz and the others seemed to have mentioned Laxus, right? At this time, they mentioned the S-Rank Magic Shooter Advancement Test, and also mentioned Laxus. Could it be? Noah's gaze became slightly serious. Every year, only one person can pass the S-Rank Magic Shooter Advancement Test, otherwise, there would not be a single person. Could it be that the person who passed this year's S-rank magic shooter advancement test is? Mira and Alusha looked at each other and nodded, proving Noah's conjecture to be correct. The person who passed this year is Laxus. Noah was silent. Laxus. This brother in name, who hated the weak and only acknowledged the strong, had finally become an S-rank magic shooter. A 17-year-old S-rank magic shooter. Should it be said, as expected of him? Noah. Knowing that the relationship between Noah and Laxus was somewhat tense, Mira, Lisanna, Alusha, and the others looked at Noah with some worry. Noah faintly smiled and raised his head to look at the sky, the expression in his eyes beginning to soar. Losing to anyone is fine, but I absolutely cannot lose to him. Chapter 56. The wind blew quietly from the distant horizon, adding a hint of coolness to the air. Magnolia was still standing in the middle of the forest and mountains. From time to time, the shouts of the townsfolk could be heard. Nothing had changed. It was still as lively as before. Now that it was autumn, the temperature of Magnolia had dropped a lot, causing the town to feel a little chilly. Of course, if there wasn't a trace of wind, the humid weather would still make people feel suffocated. Rustle, rustle, in a forest outside of Magnolia, which was even hotter, the faint sound of leaves rustling could be heard from a certain corner. The rustling sound grew louder and louder, as if something was approaching. Whoosh! In the next second, a figure suddenly appeared in the forest. It was running at an extremely high speed, accompanied by a subtle sound of breaking air. It was a young man of about 17 years old, barefoot, and bare-chested, wearing only shorts. At this moment, the young man was holding up a boulder that was several times larger than his entire body. His speed was even faster than that of a cheetah as he trampled on the ground of the mountain forest. While causing the earth to tremble, he ran madly through the mountain forest, nimbly avoiding the trees and obstacles that came his way as he continued to run. Whoosh! After a long while, the young man finally stopped his footsteps and casually threw the huge rock that was raised above his head to the side. Dong! The boulder crashed to the side, crushing the surrounding branches and grass. It also smashed a hole in the ground, stirring up some smoke and dust. After doing all this, the young man raised his head and looked at the sky. His face was no longer young and was starting to mature. His eyes were so deep that they seemed to be able to suck people in under the sunlight. This was a face that had taken 4 whole years to grow. Time flew. In the blink of an eye, 4 years had passed. Noah, who was already 17 years old, had not only grown in height and appearance, but he had also grown in strength that no one knew the limits of except for him. Ever since Noah received the news that Laxus had passed the S-rank magic shooter advancement test and was promoted to an S-rank magic shooter, not only had he not returned to Fairy Tale, but he had also been challenging his limits almost every day. In these 4 years, Noah had not only been training his magic, physical ability, swordsmanship, fighting ability, mana control, even the flexibility, acuity, reflexes, senses, and other aspects of the body were constantly trained to challenge the limits of their limits. It was not an exaggeration to say that Noah's strength had undergone a drastic change compared to 4 years ago. At the very least, Noah was confident that if he had the chance to fight the Noah from 4 years ago, he would be able to defeat the Noah from 4 years ago without using any destructive spells or superb sword skills. In fact, he wouldn't even need to move half a step. He would be able to defeat the Noah from 4 years ago with just a swing of his fist. This was only a portion of Noah's current strength. As for magic, glancing at the boulder beside him, Noah reached out his hand and lightly pressed on it. He then lifted his feet and walked forward, his figure gradually disappearing into the forest. Whang! After Noah's figure disappeared into the forest, the boulder that was several times bigger than Noah's body suddenly flashed with light. Along the cracks, the entire boulder seemed to be lined up neatly in a grid. Then, pang! In the midst of the muffled sound, along the neatly arranged lines, the boulder seemed to have exploded, turning into neat cubes that fell to the ground, once again stirring up a lot of smoke and dust. In the past 4 years, although Noah had been cultivating, he did not have a fixed place. Sometimes it was a mountain. Sometimes it was a lake. Sometimes it was a river. Sometimes it was a forest. Sometimes it was a deep valley or an abyss. Just like that, Noah continued his cultivation as he wandered in various peaceful environments and dangerous places without a fixed residence. However, even if the place was different, Noah had never left the range where he could see Magnolia. Even if he went deep into the dangerous forest and fought with all kinds of monsters to hone his combat experience, Noah would find a high place every day to take a look at Magnolia and take a look at the fairy's tale. Also, because he did not go too far from Magnolia, in the past 4 years, Mira, Lisanna, and Alusha could find traces of Noah from time to time. Sometimes it was a group. Sometimes it was an individual. Sometimes it was a group. Sometimes it was only 2 or 3 people. In short, every once in a while, Noah could always see his childhood friends, so his days were not boring. After all, even the longest time they did not see each other was only half a year. Of course, the shortest time they did not see each other was more than 2 or 3 months. From time to time, he would gather with his childhood friends, play around, and have fun. Each time did not exceed a day. Other than that, there was only training, training, and training. In this life of training, Noah completed these 4 years of cultivation. Noah put on a simple white shirt, black trousers, and a white coat that went past his thighs. He turned his head and looked in the direction of Magnolia. The familiar guild building seemed to appear in his eyes. After a while, he murmured to himself, "That's right. It's time to go back, right?" As he said this, Noah clenched his fist and spread out his hand. A fog-like white light rose from it and rolled back and forth. Only those who were familiar with the high-grade destructive spell, Crush, would know that if this fog-like white light accidentally touched something, the thing that touched it would definitely be smashed to pieces. Noah allowed such a dangerous thing to roll back and forth on his palm, and skillfully let the light dim. After a while, he clenched his fist tightly. In fact, since a year ago, Noah's crush had never gone out of control. However, for the sake of conservatism, Noah still trained Crush for an entire year. Now, Noah had 100% confidence to make such a declaration. Even Kilda's control of a Crush is not as good as mine. After leaving such a declaration, Noah finally could not suppress the feelings of homesickness in his heart. On his face, an excited smile that he had not seen for a long time appeared. He reached out, grabbed the cloth bag that contained the knight's sword and walked towards Magnolia. Magnolia, fairy's tale. Looking at the familiar building in front of him, Noah was stunned for a long time. 4 years. He had not returned for a full 4 years. Even if 4 years had passed, Fairy's tale still did not change much. Only the door seemed to have been changed a few times. Thinking about it, it should not have been destroyed by nature, but by those troublemakers, right? Taking a deep breath, Noah suppressed the feelings in his heart. He reached out and pushed open the door of the guild. The sun had just risen not long ago. Therefore, there was no one in the first floor of the guild's bar. Noah looked at the familiar scene and walked around the bar. Then, he walked up the stairs to the 3rd floor and reached the door of his room. He reached out and pushed it open. What entered his eyes was a scene that completely overlapped with the scene in his memory. Not even the slightest bit of change. But there was not a speck of dust. Just like when Noah had just left. Noah stood at the door and looked for a long time. After a long while, a voice gently reverberated in this simple and crude room. "I'm back." Chapter 57. Who? The moment he opened the window, a cool breeze blew into Noah's face, blowing the bangs in front of Noah's forehead. Noah took a deep breath of fresh air, feeling very comfortable, and his heart seemed to have melted. 4 years. 4 years had passed. He had finally returned to this place. Did he miss it? Perhaps there was. However, Noah was more moved. Undoubtedly, he had not been back for 4 years. The decoration of Noah's room was exactly the same as when he had just left. There was not even a speck of dust. Even the clothes in the wardrobe that belonged to 4 years ago and could not be worn now were still arranged properly. What did this mean? It meant that even if Noah was not in fairy tale for 4 years, there was still someone who came to clean his room almost every day, but did not touch his things without permission. Everything was maintained exactly the same as when he had left. Knowing this, how could Noah not be moved? Of course, Noah could guess who had been cleaning his room for more than 4 years. Really? A beautiful figure that he had not seen for a long time appeared in his mind. Noah could not help but have a smile on his face. I have to thank her properly. Just when Noah was immersed in his memories and feeling moved, a somewhat uncertain and full of disbelief voice echoed behind Noah's back. Noah! Brother! Hearing this familiar yet strange voice, Noah almost reflexively turned around and looked behind him. There, an extremely beautiful girl was standing there. It was a cute and delicate young girl who was about 15 or 16 years old. She had snow-white, soft, shoulder-length hair, and was as white as snow. The girl stood at the door, looking at Noah with a very hesitant and somewhat excited expression. Her voice was slightly trembling as it squeezed out from her throat. Brother Noah, is that you? Seeing the girl who had changed quite a bit from the familiar figure in his memories call out to him with a familiar tone and address, Noah only stared at her, his expression becoming more and more gentle. Although I have left the guild for 4 years, if I remember correctly, you found me in the wilderness half a year ago. You should be able to recognize me, right? Saying this, Noah called out the name of the extremely beautiful girl in front of him. Lisanna. Lisanna finally confirmed that the person in front of her was the owner of this room. All the hesitation and uncertainty on her delicate face turned into excitement, and she did not hesitate to throw herself at Noah. Brother Noah. Noah did not expect her to throw herself at him, and was hugged so tightly that he almost fell to the ground. However, she didn't care about that at all. She hugged Noah with all her might, rubbing her little face against his chest. Brother Noah. You're finally back. That's great. That's great. Feeling the soft and delicate body of the girl in his embrace through close proximity, Noah's heart that hadn't wavered in the past 4 years was fiercely shaken for a few seconds. Even 4 years ago, when she was still very close to Noah, the most she did was hold Noah's hand and hug Noah's arm. Although she would sometimes act spoiled and make Noah piggyback her, she had never hugged Noah. So, without a doubt, this was the first time she had hugged Noah so fiercely, allowing Noah to hug her tightly. How could Noah, who had never been so close to a girl before, he didn't know about Mila and Lisanna kissing him, not be shaken? Moreover, the current Lisanna could not be compared to the Lisanna of the past. At the very least, Noah, who was hugged tightly by Lisanna, could clearly feel that Lisanna had begun to develop. Hidden under her clothes, there was a certain degree of softness. I know you're happy. I'm happy too, Noah said somewhat awkwardly. But you don't have to be so excited, right? Didn't we just meet half a year ago? You also know that we haven't seen each other for half a year. Lisanna raised her head from Noah's embrace and stared straight at Noah with a somewhat angry expression. We used to be together every day, but we've only seen each other less than 10 times in the past 4 years. You won't let me get excited. All right, I know. Noah could only surrender. Suppressing the rare wavering in his heart, he stretched out his hand and gently stroked Lisanna's beautiful white hair like he did when they were children. "I'm back. Welcome back." Lisanna smiled happily and buried her face in Noah's embrace once more. "It really is Big Brother Noah's scent. I miss it so much." "So you even remember my scent?" Noah didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he gently pushed the dissatisfied Lisanna away and looked around his clean room. "Lass, you've been cleaning my room for the past 4 years, right?" "Yes." Lisanna didn't hide it and nodded. When Big Brother Noah wasn't around, Big Sister Alusha didn't stay in the guild often and went out to work. Big Brother Elfie was playing with Naz and Gray, and Big Sister Alusha either went out to work like Big Sister Alusha or went to the forest to train. I was the only one who was bored, so I came to clean when I had nothing to do to pass the time. "I see." Noah looked at Lisanna, who still refused to let go of him, and sized her up. "You've changed a lot too, is that so?" Lisanna smiled a little embarrassedly, but she didn't shift her gaze away and continued to stare at Noah. "Have I become more feminine than before?" "You're still the same as before. You're so mischievous." Noah couldn't help but knock her on the head. When she clutched her head and cried out, he broke free from her embrace and walked out of the room. "Let's go. Let's go say hi to everyone." "Wait. Big Brother Noah." Chapter 58. Let's settle this once and for all. What a familiar voice. What a familiar line. What a familiar figure. What a familiar scene. This nostalgic scene completely dispelled Noah's slight discomfort after not coming back for 4 years, causing the corners of Noah's mouth to slowly curl up. As if it had just happened yesterday, Noah stretched out his hand, clenched his fist, and directly punched the cherry-haired youth's abdomen at a speed many times faster than the speed of the incoming cherry-haired youth. Bang! Ow! Amidst a strange scream, the cherry-haired youth who was hit in the abdomen by Noah had his eyes bulged, his body stiffened, and then softly fell to the ground. "I just came back, and I want to have a good rest, so can we talk about this next time?" Noah slowly retracted his fist, and under the speechless expression of the entire fairy tale guild members, he smiled and greeted the cherry-haired youth who was lying on the ground. "Long time no see. Naz." He. Naz, who had grown a lot taller, and even his face had matured a lot, had the usual hearty smile on his face. He shouted excitedly while holding his painful abdomen. "Sure enough, it's the same as before, so strong that it's exciting." Noah smiled slightly, and just as he was about to say something, a small black shadow suddenly descended from the sky and landed beside Naz. "Naz, are you okay?" "Huh?" Noah was a little surprised. Because, floating beside Naz who was lying on the ground, was a cat. It was a blue cat with a pair of white wings on its back. "I'm fine." Naz jumped up from the ground energetically, rubbed his abdomen, and said to the cat with wings. "This level is nothing, hubby." "Hubby?" Noah looked curiously at the cat with wings. "You're called hubby." "Love." The blue kitten named Hubby cried out energetically. "Hubby was hatched from an egg that Sling I picked up outside, not long after you left." At this time, a young man with short black hair and a fairy tale guild emblem on the right side of his chest walked out from the crowd and gave Noah a big hug. He was completely naked and only wore a pair of shorts. "You're finally back, you rascal." "Gray." Noah gave Gray a hug as well, and then said with a smile. "It's been a long time since we last met. You haven't changed at all. You're not even wearing clothes." "Oh. I forgot." Gray acted as if he had just realized that he was not wearing any clothes, which made everyone laugh again. Huff. Suddenly, a delicate voice sounded, and a figure suddenly appeared behind Noah. She raised her leg and kicked fiercely in the direction of Noah. Before the delicate voice sounded, Noah felt an aura behind him. Then, it turned into a whip shadow and whipped towards Noah. The chaotic wind brought by the attack also blew towards Noah's back. Noah still had a smile on his face, as if he didn't feel anything. His body seemed to be very slow, but in fact, it was very fast, and he slightly stepped aside. The fierce kick mixed with the sharp wind brushed past Noah's side and kicked past the position where Noah was originally at. Huff! At the same time, another delicate voice sounded, and another figure appeared on the other side of Noah without warning. A dazzling light flashed in her hand, and a knight's sword emerged. She held it tightly, and with a more fierce attack than the kick that just attacked Noah, she mercilessly chopped towards Noah. Ding! This time, Noah didn't even try to dodge. He directly stretched out a hand, and when the knight's sword was less than 10 centimeters away from his face, he used 2 fingers to catch the sharp blade of the sword and neutralize the attack. It was complicated to describe, but in fact, in the eyes of the guild members of Fairy Tale, they only heard 2 delicate voices in less than a second. Then, Noah moved half a step, and a leg stretched out from the right side of his body. A sharp knight's sword appeared on the left side of his body, and it was about to chop Noah's head, but it was caught by Noah's 2 fingers in front of his face. Then, 2 figures appeared behind Noah. When they saw this scene clearly and understood what had just happened, the full appearance of the 2 figures behind Noah who had attacked him was also imprinted in everyone's eyes. Everyone's mouths were wide open. As for Noah, at this moment, his expression revealed some helplessness. "Is this how you welcome me?" The 2 figures that launched the swift kick and the sharp slash at the same time retracted their attacks, and with a leap, they appeared in front of Noah. They were 2 girls who were about the same age as Noah. They were also about 17 years old. On the left was a young girl with waist-length hair tied into a long white ponytail with a bow-like hairband. She was wearing a black vest that could only cover her huge breasts, exposing her navel and back, and a black short skirt that reached her roots. She was wearing black stockings. On the right was a girl with long red hair that reached her waist. She wore silver armor and a blue pleated skirt, and she held a knight's sword in her hand. She had the heroic spirit of a Valkyrie. Both of these girls were very familiar with Noah, but they had changed. However, just like Lisanna, they had all undergone their own changes. They were no longer little girls, but true, mature women. They were Mira and Alusha. "You bastard!" Even though she had grown into a charming girl in all aspects, Myra's tone was still the same as before. Not only was she nasty, but she was also very fierce. Her eyes were filled with killing intent as she glared at Noah. "Do you still know how to come back?" Undoubtedly, she said this with a fierce tone, but her words sounded like a wife blaming her husband for fooling around outside. In contrast to Mira, Alusha simply put away her sword with a faint smile on her face. She looked at Noah and nodded. "It's really been a long time. You've changed a lot." "You've changed a lot as well," Noah said in a very emotional tone, especially when he inadvertently caught a glimpse of Myra's small vest that could not hide all of her fullness. "You've changed so much that I almost couldn't recognize you. Noah, don't forget about us." Beside the table, a dark-skinned, burly, white-haired man in a high school uniform stood up and smiled at Noah. "We're here too. You're back." Beside him, a girl with long, curly black hair and wearing a swimsuit called out in a drunken manner. She hugged a large barrel of wine and drank boldly. "There's finally a decent man in this guild." "You're Elfman and Kana?" Noah asked in a surprised tone. "You've changed a lot too, especially Kana. When did you learn how to drink?" "Ma ma ma." Kana held her red face and laughed boldly. "Don't mind such a small matter. His gaze swept across the faces of his childhood playmates. Looking at their current appearances and recalling the last time he saw them, Noah could only sigh at how time could change everything. At this moment, a short old man walked over from the bar and stopped in front of Noah. All the voices in the guild disappeared in an instant. Noah looked at the old man in front of him who he hadn't seen for 4 years. The old man also looked at Noah. Their eyes were filled with undetectable excitement. After a long time, the old man smiled and spoke. "You've grown up." Noah nodded heavily and spat out a sentence that contained almost all his emotions. "I'm back, Grandpa." Chapter 59. Night. Following the memories that remained in his mind, Noah walked along a small path in Magnolia Forest. After walking for about 10 minutes, he arrived at the bank of the river. Even in the incomparably dark night, the river still flowed as quietly as it did 4 years ago. The faint but clear sound of flowing water echoed in Noah's ears, miraculously calming his heart. Standing by the bank, Noah quietly looked at the familiar river before him. What flashed in his mind was the time when he trained his mana control and swordsmanship here, as well as the time when he trained around Magnolia. As mentioned earlier, Noah was very likely to be an anomaly. An anomaly who was born with the appearance and intelligence of a 10-year-old. In other words, Noah, who had just turned 17 this year, had not only lived for 7 years, but he had also spent almost all of those 7 years training himself and strengthening himself. Therefore, to Noah, those 7 years were boring but also very meaningful. That was because while Noah had been training himself, he also had his own family. That was because while Noah had been growing stronger, he also had his own companions. Therefore, even if Noah was given another chance, Noah would still spend those 7 years on the same thing without any regrets. That was something that Noah had never regretted. Immersed in his memories, Noah soon heard 2 or 3 footsteps behind him, pulling him back from his memories. "Ah! It's really here." As the cheerful voice sounded, the 3 girls who had once shared this secret place with Noah appeared on the other side of the forest. Just like in the past, Mira, Lisanna, and Alusha came to Noah's side. "Why are you hiding here by yourself?" Mira crossed her arms as a provocative smile appeared on her face. "Is it because you haven't been back in the guild for too long, so you're shy?" There are many newbies who have only joined Fairy Tale in the past 4 years. They're all very curious about you, Big Brother Noah. Lisanna hugged Noah's arm and smiled sweetly. "I told them that Big Brother Noah used to be a powerful archmage like Big Sister Mira and Alusha, but they didn't believe me. Actually, most of them already believed it. They just didn't say it out loud." Alusha chuckled. "After all, many people saw how Noah effortlessly neutralized my attack with Mira and I this morning." Listening to his 3 childhood playmates speak one after another, but the style of their words was still the same as before, Noah smiled knowingly. "It seems that you've all had a good time in the guild these past 4 years. Big Brother Noah, Big Sister Mira and Alusha are no longer the same as they were 4 years ago." Lisanna smiled mysteriously. Then, she said something that made Noah startled. "No matter what, the Big Sister Mira and Alusha have already become S-rank archmages." S-rank archmages. This time, Noah was really surprised. He looked at Mira and Alusha in astonishment. "You passed the S-rank archmage advancement test. About 2 years after you left, I was selected by the chairman to take part in that year's S-rank archmage advancement test," Alusha said with some nostalgia. "Many things happened in between, and there were times when I almost gave up. But in the end, I persevered and passed that year's S-rank archmage advancement test, obtaining the qualifications to be promoted to an S-rank archmage. Although I wasn't willing, I passed the S-rank archmage advancement test a year after she became an S-rank archmage." Myra's face was full of displeasure. "In other words, I became an S-rank archmage a year ago." That year, when the 15-year-old Alusha passed the S-rank Archmage advancement test and became an S-rank Archmage, it caused quite a commotion. Because of this, she became known as the youngest S-rank Archmage in the history of fairy tale. Lisanna said with a smile. Although big sister Mira was late by a year, there weren't many people in the history of fairy tale who became an S-rank Archmage at the age of 16. Big brother Noah, you're not just one step behind. Hearing that, the shock in Noah's heart slowly dissipated. Looking at Mira and Alusha's faces, he more or less felt admiration for these two playmates of the same age. Noah didn't know what the S-rank Archmage advancement test of other guilds was like. Fairy Tale's S-rank Archmage advancement test had some changes every year, so it couldn't be used as a reference. However, if Fairy Tale's members wanted to take part in the S-rank Archmage advancement test, first of all, not only did they need to have a certain amount of strength, they also needed to have a certain amount of experience. This experience didn't refer to the length of time they had spent in Fairy Tale. It might be a bit of an exaggeration to say that a new member could take part in Fairy Tale's S-rank Archmage advancement test, but basically, if they had 1 or 2 years' time, it wouldn't be a problem to take part in Fairy Tale's S-rank Archmage advancement test. Therefore, the experience here referred to the Archmage's activity and ability before taking part in the S-rank Archmage advancement test. That was to say, the Archmage had accepted and completed a certain number of tasks in the guild. In the end, this so-called experience was to let the guild leaders see that they had the ability to take part in the S-rank Archmage advancement test. In this way, the guild leader would consider letting the Archmage who was active enough to enter his site and had a certain amount of ability to take part in the S-rank Archmage advancement test. When Alusha took part in the S-rank Archmage advancement test, she was 15 years old. When Mira took part in the S-rank Archmage advancement test, she was 16 years old. This was enough to prove that the two girls were able to obtain the qualifications to take part in the S-rank Archmage advancement test at such a young age. How much effort had they put in? Even Noah's nominal elder brother, the genius who had shocked Kildas, only obtained the qualifications to take part in the S-rank Archmage advancement test at the age of 17. He passed and was promoted to an S-rank Archmage. Mira and Alusha were able to reach this step earlier than Laxus. It was no wonder that Alusha spoke with a slightly proud tone. Aren't you guys too cunning? Noah was slightly dissatisfied. In these 4 years, you guys have come looking for me many times, but you didn't tell me about this matter. Mira, Lisanna, and Alusha laughed at the same time, as if telling Noah that they did it on purpose. Noah smiled bitterly. Then, how are you doing? Mira licked her lips and looked at Noah with a burning gaze. Since you've chosen to come back, that means that your crush will no longer cause any problems, right? Lisanna and Alusha's eyes were also shining, clearly very concerned about this matter. In response, Noah seemed to be repaying the 3 girls for their pranks and unhappily avoided answering. Want to know? Let's talk about it when we have the chance. This sentence unsurprisingly caused Mira and Alusha to be dissatisfied. Only Lisanna looked as if she had thought of something. Her face was slightly red as she moved her face close to Noah's ear and said in a mosquito-like voice. This time, Big Brother Noah won't crush my clothes and Big Sister Myra's, right? Noah almost tripped and fell to the ground. He rolled his eyes, causing Lisanna to laugh continuously. This night, it was as if they had returned to their childhood. The 4 of them stayed in a secret place that only they knew. The sounds of laughter and banter lasted for a long time. Chapter 60. Bye-bye. Big Brother Noah. Don't go to bed too late and not wake up tomorrow. See you tomorrow. After saying their goodbyes, Mira, Lisanna, and Alusha noisily walked in the direction of the Fairy Tale Guild, leaving only their backs to Noah. Looking at Mira, Lisanna, and Alusha's silhouettes gradually fading away in the darkness, Noah couldn't help but feel that his 3 childhood playmates had really changed a lot. Of course, the changes Noah was referring to weren't the personalities of Mira, Lisanna, and Alyssa. In fact, in terms of personality, there were basically no changes to the three girls. What had changed the most was their appearance. After 4 years, Mira, Lisanna, and Alyssa had become extremely attractive women in all senses of the word. Height, figure, wealth, all these factors had matured to varying degrees in the past 4 years. Compared to their youthful selves, the changes could be said to be earth-shattering. At the age of 15, Lisanna's body hadn't fully matured, but she already had her own unique charm. From time to time, she would reveal her delicate side and attract the attention of others. While Alyssa still wore her cold armor all day long, hiding most of her body, making it impossible to truly judge how much she had grown over the years. However, her delicate face had shed 80 to 90% of its childishness and was now extremely beautiful. There was no need to talk about Mira. Her looks weren't inferior to Alyssa's, and her beautiful figure wasn't completely hidden like Alyssa's. The impact on Noah was the greatest. Undoubtedly, when they were found half a year ago in the wilderness, the growth of the three girls wasn't so obvious. In just half a year, they had actually grown to such an extent. This was probably what the saying, "a girl changes 18 times between childhood and womanhood," meant. Everyone's grown up. In the end, Noah could only sigh and turn around, walking in the direction of the fairy tale guild. Not far from Fairy Tale, there was a female dormitory specially provided for the girls of the guild. Ever since Alyssa joined Fairy Tale, she lived in the female dormitory, and the other girls of the guild lived there as well. Mira and Lisanna, on the other hand, lived with Elfman. The three siblings lived somewhere else. As for Noah, he still chose to live in the Fairy Tale Guild. After all, that was where Noah had lived for at least 2 years. From a certain point of view, it was an existence that was similar to his shelter. He really couldn't bear to move out. Apart from Noah, no one else in the Fairy Tale Guild would be there at night unless something special happened. Or perhaps, someone had come specifically for Noah. At a place where they could clearly see the entrance of Fairy Tale, Noah had unknowingly stopped in his tracks. He stood there and raised his eyes to look ahead. Whoosh! A cold night wind blew from afar, blowing past Noah and the entrance of Fairy Tale. Standing there, a tall and sturdy figure with a coat fluttered in the wind. It was a young man who was around 20 years old, slightly older than Noah. He wore a magic musical instrument called a sound pot on his ear. The young man stood not far from the entrance of Fairy's Tale with his arms crossed in front of his chest and his eyes closed. He allowed the fur coat draped over his body to fly up and down in the wind, exuding an oppressive aura that could not be ignored. And this oppressive aura, when Noah appeared, obviously became more vigorous. Noah looked straight at the young man who was exuding a powerful aura without saying a word. Although the expression on his face wasn't as calm as if he had expected the other party to come, he also believed that it wouldn't be strange for the other party to appear in front of him any time. After a while, the young man slowly opened his eyes, revealing a pair of eyes that were as sharp as an eagle's and as violent as a tiger's in Noah's field of vision. "You have grown up." Hearing this, Noah replied with a calm face. "You are still the same as before, not much has changed." It was only 2 or 3 seconds of conversation, but the atmosphere was filled with tension. Anyone could see that the relationship between the two of them could not be considered friendly. "Do you need something from me?" Noah, who clearly knew the other party's personality, did not have the intention to waste any time and directly looked at the other party. Laxes. The one who came was Noah's elder brother in name, Makarov's grandson Laxes Doria. "Don't be so cold. As your elder brother, don't I have the right to care for my younger brother?" Laxes said with a cold expression. "Didn't you learn Kildas's magic and make an oath in front of the guild members that you will not return if you can't completely control your magic and train outside for 4 years? Now that you are back, it means that you have succeeded, right?" Laxus lowered his arms that were crossed in front of his chest, his eyes slowly becoming dangerous. Just a little, let me, your elder brother, test your tolerance, let me see how much you have grown in these 4 years. The tension in the air instantly turned into a heavy feeling. Facing Laxus's unfriendly invitation, Noah's face was still calm, but his eyes revealed a rare look of mockery. What? When did you become like Naz, looking for people to duel? Don't confuse me with that guy who likes to play games. Laxus grinned maliciously. I only attack the prey that I am interested in. As soon as his voice fell, golden arcs of electricity suddenly surged out from Laxus's body, finally forming a layer of lightning net that enveloped his entire body. Noah looked at the arcs of electricity that enveloped Laxus like countless snakes that leaped around him. Chapter 61. Beep, beep, beep. The sound of thunder and lightning clashing spread in the air. Buzz. The atmosphere was also vibrating wildly. Noah finally raised his head due to the oncoming violent thunder force. His gaze was fixed on the huge fist wrapped in thunder and lightning, and he casually took a small step to the left. The fist wrapped in thunder and lightning brushed past Noah's ear, and the sound of thunder reverberated crazily. Noah easily dodged the attack, but Laxus laughed wildly. His fist suddenly swung out in a strange angle, and fiercely smashed towards Noah's shoulder below. However, Laxus's fist suddenly froze just as it swung down. Unknowingly, Noah's hand had already grasped Laxus's wrist that was smashing down. The force in his hand was constantly exerting on Laxus's wrist, causing Laxus to feel a slight pain. His strength is quite strong. Laxus's attack was blocked again, and a hint of surprise appeared in his eyes. Immediately, the hand that was grasped by Noah's wrist suddenly surged with thunder and lightning. Beep, beep, beep. The violent golden arc condensed into a ball in Laxus's hand, and turned into a scorching plasma body. Laxus roared as if he was holding thunder and lightning in his hand. Violent volt. The power of the hand that was enveloped by lightning surged, and it forcibly broke free from Noah's hand that was holding it. With a fierce force, it smashed down furiously. This smash even produced a tearing sound in the air, and the golden arc also lit up the entire scene. Feeling the power of Laxus's blow, Noah was slightly surprised. He finally stopped defending, and his body suddenly retreated, clenching his fist tightly. Buzz! A white radiance emerged from Noah's fist, and as Noah swung, it fiercely collided with Laxus's thunder and lightning fist. Bang! A muffled sound rang out, and a violent wind blew in all directions. Bang! In the center of the wind, the plasma body in Laxus's hand was like a fragile powder the moment it came into contact with the white radiance in Noah's hand. It couldn't even last for a second, and it turned into complete small cubes and shattered. Superior grade destruction magic, crush. It wasn't only able to shatter matter. When it's learned, it can even shatter magic in one move. After 4 years, Noah has finally mastered crush, to the point of being able to destroy his opponent's magic. Laxus's body was slightly sluggish, but he quickly recovered. A fierce glint flashed in his eyes, and he even raised his other hand. Both of his fists flashed with the radiance of thunder and lightning, and wildly danced out, creating a dazzling lightning fist that almost covered Noah's field of vision. The sharp sound of wind breaking echoed in the night sky. Facing Laxus's fierce attack, Noah's expression didn't change, and he also raised his fist, which was flashing with the unique magical radiance of crush. Under the slightly shocked gaze of Laxus, on the fist that Noah swung upwards, a bright white light suddenly burst out, turning into a substantial impact light beam, and with an ear-piercing explosion, it soared into the sky, and collided with the storm of lightning. Dong! A loud, oppressive sound reverberated through the air, and a vigorous shock wave surged out, causing the ground around the fairy tale to crack open like a spiderweb. And the storm of lightning was also instantly crushed by the white impact light beam, one by one, and shattered. Immediately after, the white impact light beam did not reduce in power, and collided with the pitch-black thundercloud. Pang! The pitch-black thundercloud immediately followed the fate of the storm of lightning, and was instantly dispersed by the white impact light beam, turning into complete cubes and shattering into pieces. Then, the pitch-black thundercloud was completely shattered like black particles, and slowly floated down in the background. The scene of Noah's cold expression, raising his fist, mixed with a fierce wind, and fiercely smashing towards Laxus, was imprinted in his eyes. This scene was clearly reflected in his eyes, and Noah's fist also slowly enlarged in Laxus's pupils, causing Laxus's pupils to shrink. Just as Noah's fist was about to hit Laxus, a surge of magic rose from Laxus's strong body. Ha! Laxus roared out, and the muscles on his whole body fiercely bulged. Both of his arms were like iron hammers, and his body flashed with violent lightning. A fist mixed with violent lightning struck out, and Laxus' beast-like roar reverberated in the night sky. Thunder Dragon's crushing fist. As a result, the fist that was covered with resplendent white light and the fist that was covered with berserk lightning violently collided. Dong! Under the night sky, in front of Fairy's Tale's door, a storm-like shockwave suddenly exploded, bringing with it lightning and white light that filled every corner of the scene. For a long time, it was unable to calm down. Chapter 62. Whoosh! A gust of wind blew past the location of the fairy's tail, causing the dust and wind in front of the fairy's tail to dissipate along with the wind. Beep! Traces of weak electric arcs were still spreading on the ground. Paw! Paw! Small pieces of gravel fell to the ground one after another. In the middle of the field, Noah and Laxus had already put some distance between each other. Separated by this distance, they stared at each other with different expressions in their eyes. The expression in Laxus's eyes was angry and indifferent. Noah's eyes flashed with a hint of thoughtfulness. Sensing the magical energy rising from Laxus's body bit by bit, as well as the unique magical energy on the golden electric arcs, Noah slowly straightened his body and stared straight ahead as he recalled the magic that Laxus had just cast. You really are a dragon slayer archmage. A dragon slayer archmage. He was a sorcerer who had learned the ancient lost magic specifically used to fight against dragons, dragon slayer magic. When he was a child, Noah relied on his extraordinary sensing ability to sense that Laxus's body had a different kind of magic hidden in it. The special magic power that seemed to hide a ferocious beast had always bothered Noah. It wasn't until he met Naz that Noah began to suspect something when he sensed the same kind of magic hidden in Laxus's body. Was Laxus also a dragon slayer archmage? Now, this suspicion had finally been confirmed. Lay's dragon slayer archmage. Noah stared at Laxus's face. Why do you know this kind of magic? Naz practiced Fire's dragon slayer archmage. That was because Naz was the son of a dragon adopted by the fire dragon Igunir. Wendy, whom he had met in the forest, practiced Sky's dragon slayer archmage. However, that was also because Wendy was the daughter of Sky Dragon Grandine. Although Laxus's mother was no longer around, and his father was expelled from the fairy tale by Makarov for some reason, he grew up in the fairy tale. He was truly a child raised by humans. How could he be the son of a dragon? Didn't I tell you not to mix me up with those guys who only know how to play games all day? Laxus said coldly as he raised his arm that was flashing with dragon lightning. Although it's very unpleasant to talk about it, I wasn't as healthy as you guys when I was young. I was very weak. Therefore, my father implanted the dragon magic crystal in my body, which allowed me to use the dragon slayer magic, allowing me to become a dragon slayer magic shooter and possess this power. Magic crystals. It was a type of crystal that could be used to store magic, and could also be used to store certain types of magic. It was an extremely convenient item that could be used as a magic tool with various effects. In these 4 years, every time my strength grew, that old man would only say one sentence. Laxus looked at Noah with a somewhat ferocious expression. He said that your brother was born with a powerful magic that no one else could have, and that he learned super high-level destructive magic. When he comes back from his hard work, his strength will be very shocking. At that time, he might not even be a match for himself. Noah was silent for a while, and then he raised his head and looked at Laxus. So, you want to defeat me? Only by defeating you can I prove my strength. Laxus laughed maniacally as he spread his arms and shouted in an arrogant and unruly manner. Prove that I am the strongest in fairy tale. Hearing this, Noah looked at Laxus with a gaze that changed from calm to pity. Laxus was just a rebellious child who would never grow up. Laxus did not realize that Makarov's words were only to warn him not to be too arrogant. However, Laxus, who had a grudge against Makarov, completely twisted Makarov's warning, and saw it as suppression. Why didn't Laxus think about it? Makarov, who did not even have the ability to be self-reliant, adopted a child in fairy tale, and provided them with help. Indirectly, it could be considered as the kindness that brought them up. How could he deny the hard work of others? Noah took a deep breath and closed his eyes. If this is how you want to prove yourself, Noah's eyes, which had just closed, opened abruptly. A towering magic light pillar suddenly erupted around him, causing the surrounding atmosphere to shake and become chaotic. Then let me tell you how stupid your thinking is. The magic that was like a monstrous wave turned into a heavy pressure, causing Laxus to feel that his body had become heavy. However, Laxus was not shocked, and instead laughed crazily. That's right. This is how it should be. This is how it should be. Like a tit for tat, the violent lightning also turned into a pillar of lightning, and shot up to the sky from Laxus's body. In the next moment, the two brothers who had the same surname pressed their bodies, and like an arrow leaving the bow, rushed towards each other. Chapter 63. In fact, Noah did not want to fight with Laxus at all. Noah knew that the reason why Laxus had become so arrogant, looking down on others, and treating the weak as trash was because he had not handled his relationship with Makarov well. Laxus's father, who was also Makarov's son, was originally a member of Fairy Tale. However, this person did some damage to Fairy Tale and was expelled from the guild by Makarov. Because of this, the relationship between Laxus and Makarov became tense. This was because Laxus could not understand why Makarov would be so heartless to expel his son from the guild. Undoubtedly, they were family. Just as Noah thought, with that incident as the beginning, Laxus completely entered a rebellious period and his relationship with Makarov became tense. Even if this was not the case, Noah, who had lived under the same roof as Laxus and had interacted with Laxus many times, knew that Laxus's nature was not bad. However, not bad did not necessarily mean that it was good. At the very least, if Laxus was allowed to continue like this, even if Laxus's nature was not bad, sooner or later, he would walk on a path of no return. Noah knew that there was nothing he could do. Even Makarov could not make Laxus realize his mistakes, so Noah did not think that he could do it. However, if Laxus had to fight with him to realize what he was lacking, then Noah would definitely not mind. He wanted to defeat this arrogant monster who was much stronger than Mira and Alusha and who was almost as strong as Kildes. With that determination, Noah slowly mixed the less than 10% of the mana that he had just used with the vast ocean-like mana in his body and mobilized it. This time, Noah wanted to use his full strength. Unfortunately, just as Noah and Laxus were about to collide with each other with monstrous mana and lightning, a furious roar sounded from the side. Stop it! As soon as he finished speaking, an abnormally huge arm that was comparable to a 10-meter-tall building with a clenched fist descended from the sky and smashed into Noah and Laxus, who were about to collide with each other. Noah and Laxus froze at the same time, then retreated explosively. Bang! The huge fist heavily smashed into the spot where Noah and Laxus would have collided if they had not stopped, stirring up dust and rubble, and creating a hole in the ground. Noah! Two figures suddenly flashed from the side and appeared beside Noah. It was Mira and Alusha who had returned. Even Lisanna ran over from afar and ran to Noah's side with an anxious look on her face. Laxus! At the same time, the same number of figures appeared from the side and came to Laxus's side. It was a group of 2 men and a woman. One of the men had long green hair and was dressed like a knight with a western sword at his waist. He stood in front of Laxus as if to protect him. His sharp eyes looked straight ahead and stared at Noah. The one who was taller than the knight with the western sword wore a somewhat strange style of clothes. His clothes even had a hood pulled up directly and covered his head like a hood. He also wore a helmet-like mask on his face that covered his eyes. As for the remaining woman, she had brown hair and was dressed like a formal dress. She was a tall girl with a tall figure. Noah glanced at the 3 people who appeared in front of Laxus and stood there like guards. Only then did he withdraw his gaze. At the same time, the huge fist in the middle of the field began to slowly retract. Finally, it returned to its owner's body and returned to its owner's body. It was Makarov. That was the magic that Makarov often used, gigantification. It was a magic that could make one's body gigantic, or a part of one's body gigantic, and thus have the destructive power of a giant. It could be said that it was synonymous with Makarov. Thus, when they saw the huge fist descending from the sky, Noah and Laxus knew that this fight was not going to happen. Tisk! Laxus clenched his fist so hard that his veins were about to pop out. You want to hinder me again? Old man! Enough! Laxus! Alusha's sharp gaze shot straight at Laxus. You're making a move here, are you trying to destroy the guild? You actually dare to bully your own brother. That's all you've got, Raxus. Mira looked at Raxus mockingly. As soon as Noah came back, you hurriedly came looking for trouble. Are you that worried that Noah will grow stronger than you in these 4 years? Shut up. Mira Jenny. The man with the western sword on his waist had already made a sword-drawing gesture. If you insult Laxus again, I will not be polite anymore. He. The man in the strange costume also laughed strangely. If you want to provoke Laxus, it's too early for you. Mira, I don't mind letting you see how powerful my babies are. I want to fight with Alusha. The brown-haired girl standing next to the 2 men looked at Alusha provocatively and said with a somewhat narcissistic tone. The title of Fairy Queen should be mine, I'm the real fairy. Freed. Bikesrow. Abarglin. Beside Noah, Lisanna, who was checking whether Noah was injured, glanced at the 3 people standing in front of Laxus and called out their names one by one in surprise. Why is Thor clan also here? Want to fight? Thor clan. Mira took a step forward and raised her fingers, the expression on her face was slightly terrifying. Those who were familiar with Mira should be able to see that she was really angry. I won't be merciful. Enough. Makarov finally spoke, his eyes fixed on Laxus. Laxus, I won't pursue tonight's matter as long as you go back now. Did I do anything wrong? Laxus sneered. It's just a duel with a family that hasn't happened in a long time. Didn't you always say that he's stronger than me? Then let him fight me. You. Mira, Lisanna, and Alusha opened their mouths as if wanting to say something, but they were stopped by Noah. Gently pressing down on Lisanna's hand on his arm, Noah stepped forward and looked past Mira and Alusha to Laxus. If you still want to continue, I can accompany you at any time, but let me give you a piece of advice. You know how powerful Crush is, I don't have the confidence to hold back. Hearing Noah's shameless words, Freed, Bikesrow, and Abarglin's faces were filled with anger. Laxus looked at Makarov with an uncertain expression, then at Fairy's tail behind him. He smacked his lips in anger and glared at Noah. Listen well, sooner or later, I will prove that I am the strongest existence in Fairy's tail. Laxus pointed at Noah as if declaring war. It doesn't matter if it's you or that old man, one day, I will trample all of you under my feet. Leaving those words behind, Laxus picked up the coat that had fallen on the ground, turned around, and left the scene. The 3 members of the Thor clan immediately followed him. Seeing Laxus's figure slowly disappear into the distance, Mira, Alusha, and Lisanna, as well as Makarov, remained silent for a long time. Only Noah, who clearly saw Laxus glance in the direction of Fairy's tail, calmed down and muttered. One day, you will understand that what you should strive for the most is not the title of the strongest. Chapter 64. The next day, Fairy's tail, Lisanna, who had just woken up Noah, stared at Noah with a gaze that seemed to materialize. This gave Noah, who had just woken up for less than a second, a huge fright. Noah hurriedly looked at himself, and after finding that there was nothing strange about him, he reached out his hand and touched his cheek. Then, he asked doubtfully, "You're right. I didn't have that dream this time, and I didn't cry, right?" "No," Lisanna rebuked. "I was looking to see if you were injured anywhere, brother Noah." "Injured?" Lisanna's words not only did not make Noah feel relieved, but instead made him even more confused. "Why would I be injured? Isn't this natural?" Lisanna raised a finger and made a teaching gesture. "Undoubtedly, you had such an intense fight with that Laxus last night, so it's normal for you to be injured, right? Are you sure you'll get hurt just because you fought with Laxus?" Noah grumbled. He stood up, walked to the wardrobe, and picked up some clothes. "Laxus's level last night was not enough to injure me." "Oh." Lisanna was a little surprised. "Laxus is very strong. Not only is he older than Sister Mira and Alusha, but he has also been an S-rank archmage for longer than Sister Mira and Alusha. Brother Noah, are you so confident that you can win against Laxus? And in a state where you are not injured? What you saw last night was only on the surface. It looked like we were fighting fiercely, but in fact, the fight before you arrived was just a warm-up." Noah took out his clothes and began to change. "Laxus was just about to use his full strength when you arrived. So, with Laxus's previous level of strength, there was no way he could injure me. Although Laxus's strength before he used the Dragon Slayer magic was very strong, even comparable to Mira and Alusha, Noah did not think much of him. For years of continuous and undistracted training. Just like what Makarov had said, Noah's strength had increased immeasurably due to his innate conditions that were much better than others. Although he wasn't sure how strong Laxus could be if he used his full strength, Noah felt that without using the Dragon Slayer magic, Laxus did not have the ability to injure him. Such an assertion naturally left Lisanna speechless. She walked behind Noah and smiled sweetly as she helped him put on his clothes. "Brother Noah seems to have changed." Noah didn't refuse her service and asked in confusion. "How have I changed?" "Ha ha." After helping Noah put on his clothes, she walked up to Noah and raised her head, tiptoed, and put her cute face less than 10 centimeters away from Noah's face. Her big eyes blinked. "I feel that Brother Noah has become more confident than before." If it was the old Noah, even if he had a lot of confidence, he wouldn't say it out loud. At least, he would be humble. "I'm also very humble now. You don't understand Laxus's strength." "Thor's order is indeed a party, but it's not an ordinary one," Alusha explained with a serious expression. "Fried, Bixro, and Alba Jerlin. These 3 formed their own personal guards." "Personal guards?" Noah stopped stroking his chin. "Laxus's personal guards. That's right. The one who answered Noah was Lisanna. Her expression was also a little serious. Although it's only a party of 3, whether it's Fried, Bixro, or Alba Jerlin, they're all very powerful sorcerers. In the guild, apart from the S-rank sorcerers, I think that only Naz and Gray can defeat any one of them alone. I can take care of a party like that all by myself. Myra's lips curled into a terrifying arc. I've long found Lax as an eyesore. Taking care of his personal guards shouldn't be a bad idea. Stop it. It's fine if it's just a small fight, but if it's serious, the chairman won't allow it. Alusha shook her head and looked at Noah. Speaking of parties, Noah, could it be that you want to form a party with someone? When Alusha said this, Lisanna's eyes instantly shone, and Myra's shoulders trembled imperceptibly. Those who were on good terms with each other in the guild would form parties. Mira, Lisanna, and Elfman were siblings, so it was impossible for them not to form a party. Therefore, disbanding the party was not very likely, but if they were to pull someone in, hey, big brother Noah. Lisanna tugged at Noah's sleeve with a face full of hope. Why don't you join our party? Join your team, huh? Noah muttered to himself. Chapter 65. In the past 4 years, Noah had been living in the wild, deep in the mountains and forests. He ate wild game and fruits, drank spring water in streams, and lived in stone and wooden houses. However, it wasn't as if he didn't need money. For example, he had to wear bigger clothes as he grew taller, black beads to train his mana control, and all sorts of potions to maintain his magical swords. They were all things that couldn't be found in the wilderness. Noah's savings had long been depleted after 4 years of expenses, and the money he had left wouldn't even last him a few days. Ever since Noah officially accepted missions from the guild and started working, Noah had refused all living expenses from Makarov. He was truly starting to take charge of the guild. If he didn't think of a way to work, Noah might really have to borrow money from others. That was why her words reminded Noah that it was time for him to start working again. As for forming a party, Noah didn't have the intention to do so. I'm sorry, I don't want to join your family's team so abruptly, Noah rejected straightforwardly. That's why, for the time being, let me be alone. Ah. She called out unwillingly. What's the matter? Big brother Noah will become a family with us sooner or later anyway. Cough, cough, cough. Mira immediately started coughing violently as if she had been choked. Become a family. Alusha looked at Noah strangely. Oh. Gray and Naz both cried out. Something's going on. Habi purposely curled his tongue and spoke in an ambiguous tone. Even Kana, who was drinking at the side, spat out a mouthful of wine. Elfman also slipped from his chair and cried out in pain. You! What nonsense are you talking about? Noya's expression had already stiffened. Sensing that the gazes from the surroundings had become piercing, he pretended to glare at her angrily. Why would I become a family with you? Because. Lisanna held her cheeks shyly. Big brother Noah, you've already seen me and big sister Mira. Whoa whoa whoa. Before Lisanna could finish her sentence, Mira, who was blushing, covered her mouth. I've seen you and Mira, what? Around them, a group of curious little friends all gathered with shining eyes. However, before they could surround her, they were met with Myra's angry roar. What's there to be curious about? Get out of my way. Wow! The group of little friends immediately scattered like birds and beasts. It was only then that Mira looked at Noah, whose expression had once again stiffened, with a red face, and said with a grimace. If anyone else finds out about what happened that day, I'll make sure you die a horrible death. After saying that, Mira grabbed Lisanna, whose mouth she had covered, and walked away, ignoring Lisanna's struggles. Of course, Noah, who had sharpened his five senses due to years of training, could vaguely hear the conversation between the two girls. Idiot Lisanna, why did you mention what happened back then? What does it have to do with anything? I really want to become a family with Big Brother Noah anyway. Do you really want to marry that fellow that much? Don't you want to, Big Sister Mira? WH. What kind of question is that? Of course I don't want to. Hee, Big Sister Mira, you can fool others, but you can't fool me. Undoubtedly, every night when I go to bed, I call out Big Brother Noah's name, You shut up. Lisanna. Noah, who was behind them, couldn't hear them very clearly, but he could clearly see Myra's blushing face as she teased Lisanna. At that moment, he felt a little helpless. Many of us in the guild are childhood sweethearts who bathed together when we were young, right? Why is it that if I see my childhood sweetheart naked, it'll turn into a scene where I have to get married? With such thoughts in mind, Noah held his throbbing head and went to the board where the requests were posted, looking for a job that suited him. However, before Noah could find a job that suited him, a voice interrupted Noah from behind. Noah? Is that Noah? The voice that came from behind Noah was a very tender and sweet girl's voice. Noah turned his head and looked behind him. Behind Noah, a girl stood side by side with two men, imprinting themselves into Noah's eyes. The girl was about the same age as Lisanna, around 15 years old. However, she was very petite and had light blue shoulder-length hair that was tied up with a hairpin. As for the two men, one was wearing a very tall hat, while the other had a strange hairstyle that looked like a whale's tail. Looking at the three of them who were looking at him in surprise, Noah blinked his eyes. After a while, he found 3 figures and 3 names from 4 years ago that matched the 3 of them in front of him in his memory. He then asked with uncertainty. Sir, I'm not sure about that. Lebby? Jed? Troy? Noah? It's really you. The petite girl named Lebby was pleasantly surprised as she walked up to Noah and circled around him. Everyone in the guild said that you're back. I thought they were teasing me again. Speaking of which, you're much taller than you were 4 years ago. Hearing this, Noah smiled more or less and reached out his hand to pat Lebby's head. You've grown a lot taller too, but you're still as petite as before. Lebby. Her full name was Lebby Marcogadon. Like Noah, she had joined Fairy Tale rather early. Not long after Noah joined Fairy Tale, they got to know each other. Jed and Troy, who were standing behind her, were her childhood friends who grew up with her. It was because of these 2 childhood friends that Lebby rarely interacted with Noah or the other children in the guild. Otherwise, Lebby would have become Noah's childhood playmate. On the other hand, Alusha, who lived in the same female dormitory as Lebby, had a good relationship with Lebby. Back then, it was also because of Alusha that Noah and Lebby got to know each other. Don't touch my head. Lebby slapped Noah's hand away. Also, I'm not young anymore. You're the one who grew too fast. Noah could not help but laugh. Just as he was about to make fun of Lebby, 2 resentful voices began to rise from the side. Damn it, he actually touched Lebby's head so intimately. I'm so envious. No, it's so annoying. Of course, Jed and Troy were the only ones who were muttering to themselves. Both of them were childhood friends of Lebby. Now that he looked at it, it seemed that they had formed a small team with Lebby. However, just like when they were young, they did not know how to hide their emotions. After all, anyone who knew these 2 people would know that they had been secretly in love with Lebby for a long time. At that moment, Noah could only shrug and walk away from Lebby. Seeing that you guys are so energetic, I'm relieved. Well then, I'll continue to look for a job. Wait. Seeing that Noah was about to leave, Lebby wanted to say something but was interrupted by Makarov, who was sitting cross-legged at the bar. Noah! Come here for a moment. All right. Noah nodded and walked towards Makarov. This made Lebby swallow her words and an angry expression appeared on her face. Just like before, leaving after a few sentences. Don't tell me you don't want to talk to me that much. Noah is also very busy. Jed quickly said. Let's not disturb him. After all, he's been as powerful as Mira and Alusha since young. Troy said resentfully. He's not from the same world as us. Lebby snorted softly and muttered to herself as she stared at Noah's back as he walked towards the bar. The more you ignore me, the more I'll pester you. Let's see what you can do. It was not that Noah ignored Lebby, he just did not want to disturb Jed and Troy's relationship. If Jed and Troy knew that Lebby had purposely approached Noah because of their relationship, how would they feel? Chapter 66. Grandpa. Noah came to the bar and stood in front of Makarov, who was sitting cross-legged. His eyes were fixed on Makarov. Do you need something from me? Noah, Makarov took a sip of wine and said drunkenly. Do you have something to do now? I was just about to go out to work. Noah scratched his cheek. But if Grandpa has something for me to do, I can postpone it for 1 or 2 days. Work? Makarov nodded. That's good. I have a commission here that I hope you can complete. Commission? Noah was slightly stunned. What kind of commission does Grandpa need to find someone to complete it? Even though only S-rank archmages could accept the extremely difficult and dangerous missions posted on the commission board on the 2nd floor, Makarov only posted the commission orders there. Anyone who wanted to accept those missions would have to go to the 2nd floor to tear down the commission orders and bring them to Makarov for him to look over. Even when the council wanted someone to complete a commission, Makarov directly posted it on the commission board before suggesting Noah to do it. He had never seen the commission order before Makarov found someone to complete it. Well, this commission doesn't need a commission order, Makarov seemed to have seen through Noah's doubts and explained. That's because I'm the one who posted it. It's a spontaneous request from Fairy Tale. A commission issued by Grandpa. Noah was stunned. Makarov drank all the wine in the cup in his hand, and his expression became serious. Actually, I hope you can make a trip to the holy land of Fairy Tale Celestial Wolf Island. Celestial Wolf Island. Noah frowned. Noah had been a member of Fairy Tale for quite some time. Naturally, it was impossible for him not to have heard of this island that was very special to Fairy Tale. Just as Makarov said, Celestial Wolf Island was the holy land of Fairy Tale. Only those who had the Fairy Tale emblem could enter the island. It was said that there were legends of fairies living on Celestial Wolf Island. Hence, Celestial Wolf Island had another name, Fairy Island. The outer area of the island and the ground contained extremely strong magic, so it was not easy to be discovered by outsiders. As for Heavenly Wolf Island, it was also the resting place of the first guild leader of Fairy Tale. Although only the members of Fairy Tale could enter such a special place, since it was a holy land and the resting place of the first chairman, how could Makarov allow anyone to casually enter? Because of this, although the members of Fairy Tale knew that there was a very special holy land in the guild, the only ones who had actually been to Celestial Wolf Island were Makarov and Kildas, who had been a member of the guild for a long time and was an S-rank magic shooter. What's wrong? Noah keenly felt that Makarov's so-called commission was not that simple. Did something happen on Celestial Wolf Island? It's precisely because we don't know that we need someone to go to Celestial Wolf Island to take a look. Makarov also frowned. Celestial Wolf Island is a very special place. Although it is an island, the surrounding area and the ground contain extremely powerful mana, making it difficult for the outside world to discover Celestial Wolf Island. But because of this, it would not be strange if something happened on the island. I received a few reports from the outside world saying that someone accidentally discovered a very special island while fishing at sea. According to the description, it is very likely to be the holy land of our guild, Celestial Wolf Island. Makarov's expression was solemn. So, I suspect that the mana on Celestial Wolf Island might have some degree of disorder, causing Celestial Wolf Island to appear in the eyes of the outside world. Mana disorder. Noah repeated softly. After a while, he nodded. Grandfather, do you want me to find a way to restore the mana on Celestial Wolf Island to its original flow? That might not necessarily be the case. It is very possible that some other problem has occurred. I hope that you can go to Celestial Wolf Island and take a look. It would be best if you can resolve the problem. If you can't, find out the cause and bring back the information you need. Makarov said as he looked at Noah. This is a request from our guild. Naturally, the remuneration will be paid by the guild. There shouldn't be a problem, right? Grandfather, what are you talking about? Noah smiled bitterly. Since it is an internal problem, there is no need to talk about remuneration. I'll set out tomorrow and make a trip to Celestial Wolf Island. Is that so? Makarov smiled, not bothering to be courteous or draw a clear line between himself and Noah. I understand. Just be careful. Noah shrugged. He then began to consider his departure for Celestial Wolf Island tomorrow. Seeing Noah deep in thought by himself, Makarov silently walked away, leaving Noah alone in front of the bar, deep in thought. After an unknown amount of time, Noah softly muttered to himself. Celestial Wolf Island. At this moment, Noah's heart fiercely skipped a beat. As if something had smashed into his head, his mind went blank, and his eyes lost focus. Then, Noah felt his consciousness gradually drift away. Vaguely, Noah saw such a scene. Before him was a boundless sea. On the sea was an island. It was an island with a very peculiar appearance. On this peculiar island, a gigantic tree with a crown that was 2/3 the size of the island stood in the center. It was as if two islands, one big and one small, were stacked on top of each other. Just based on its appearance, it was very easy to think of a place like paradise. Under the gigantic tree, there was a large forest. In the forest, there were many peculiar creatures. There was a creature that looked like a boar, but was taller than a building. There was a creature that looked like a dinosaur, but could walk on two legs. There was a creature that looked like a gorilla, but had a tongue that was longer than a snake. There was a creature that looked like a bird, but had no wings at all. It relied on crawling to move. All kinds of peculiar creatures gathered on such a peculiar island, turning the originally peculiar island into a dreamy paradise, making one's heart surge. Then, the scene in front of Noah changed again, into another place. That should be one of the places on the island. Noah didn't know where this place was, but he clearly saw it. At the very front, there was a tomb. On the tomb, there was a tablet. In the middle of the tablet, there was something that was burning like a golden flame. Something that made Noah's heart tremble was suspended inside. A feather. To be precise, it should be a broken and dim feather. It was such an inconspicuous feather, but it made Noah's emotions fluctuate the most in the 7 years since he was born. That was because Noah had seen the same thing before. Furthermore, it was more than once. It was in the white dream that Noah often had. Noah suddenly woke up, and the focus in his eyes converged at an extremely fast speed. His brain also returned to the state of operation, but his heart was still beating violently. Ha! 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 As if he had just had a nightmare, Noah was sweating profusely and gasping for breath. He covered his forehead, and his eyes were constantly fluctuating. Just now. What was that? The sudden experience made Noah stay in place for a long time, and there was no way for him to return to his senses. Illusion. Although he said so, his intuition told Noah that the scene he just saw was definitely not an illusion. After a long time, Noah calmed his breathing, raised his head, and looked through the window, into the distance. Heavenly Wolf Island. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.